big dominant factor in that image is that leading line to the flag.
Can I add that on that one, if you had changed your depth of field and used a limited depth of field so that it was leading in, PAL, there's your focus, but this guy was completely out of focus, or you had moved over a little bit so you didn't have the buildings and you didn't have all this other stuff in focus. So if you made this really graphic with limited depth of field, it could be very effective.
Erie's ride.
The maker did a reasonable job on the exposure. It's just a hair bright, it feels like. This is one of those times when you would love to see a little bit of variation in the sky, but there really wasn't any that day. Sometimes you can add it if you wanted.
Would a neutral density filter have helped this image? A full neutral density?
A full neutral density would not have helped it. That would be the same as just decreasing the exposure on it, which would have blocked up the boat.
Plus it's moving.
And it's moving. So that would have just given you a longer exposure, which would have given you problems. It would have been nice to see the flag flying outwards. It's just a case of when the lighting is tough, you got to think twice about how to present it. Changing it to a monochrome gets rid of the issue of the sky being kind of washed out and probably would make the image stronger.
How about pulling back a little bit? It's kind of
It is kind of tight
in there.
and centered.
That, you go back a second. That it's actually an excellent example of zoom compression. When you're shooting it like like a ship from this, like it's going to compress your background, so it feels like this is right on top of it. So you lose any chance of isolating your subject, one bit. So when you shoot a ship like this, I know in the bay it's impossible to do that, but try and get it where it's not next to a background.
Pascal dreaming.
Love it, and I'm a sucker for the moon and stars. Actually, it's probably Venus, maybe. I don't know. But it's an excellent silhouette. It looks like it kind of has like a dreamy effect going on too. Colors are great. Like it's out of focus, but it's not because the lines are sharp. I love the placement of everything, how it just all kind of works. I had it cropped in just a little bit tighter, but that's just I like things like that. Watch the artifacts again. Excellent image.
Presque Isle Ice Scapes.
Nice exposure on the sky. We've got some ice dunes that are over the break walls. We actually have a drift that's leading you into this image. But the lines that are leading you into this image crest at a break that sweeps you to the right of the image that you need to come back to. So it's a little disconjointed in that fashion. I've got lines that are moving into the image, and I have lines that are moving out of the image.
Red and blue.
Love doing water droplets. This is nicely done. Focus and depth of field are nicely done in the low angle to get a good reflection. You might want to play with some different lighting so the background isn't quite as bright, and maybe vary it a little bit, but nicely done.
It's about doing this as a square so you get the full.
A different crop so that you do it as a square is certainly an option if you're going to have the concentric circles from the drop.
Red-tailed hawk.
wow. The detail is just incredible. And I like the fact that it's, you know, that it's kind of, I don't want to say overdone because it's not, because like you're not seeing like, you know, the telltale signs of it being overprocessed. Like it's just like it's bold, which is, you know, I think the right effect for it. You know, got some catch light in the eyes too. The detail is just incredible.
Riverside Inn.
Nice complementary colors with the colors in the petals of the flowers against the green background. But what I don't like is the bottom left corner, the small purple blossom. If we could have gotten rid of that, it's a little contradictory to the flower. Or bottom right, I'm sorry, back there, backwards. If we could have gotten rid of that, I think that would have added a little more punch to this image. And also, we're a little tight on the crop for the petals on the left-hand side.
Sandscape. There. 22.
Nicely seen. Going out and seeing something out of the ordinary can be a very strong image. With this one, though, I immediately held up my hand and cropped the image kind of right here. And as much as I think initially in the foreground that this is pretty and balance is here, if you look through the rest of the image, this pulls us out, whereas the stronger graphic is through here. So if you hold up your hand and you crop it right over there, you see this incredibly strong graphic image that is really quite lovely.
Skeleton.
I kind of would have liked to seen this without the effect. You know, like this looks like it'd be a pretty cool scene. You got some crazy mountains going on here, and you know, like a nice little dead tree. I kind of would have liked that because it's really busy, you know. But I like the effect, but I kind of would like to see it without it too.
Snow hat.
This image, snow hat, and I get the concept of the image, what the author was trying to depict. But the problem with this image is it is out of focus. And this particular image, I'm thinking or feeling that the lamppost itself would have been in a green tone. And that's why the author actually changed this to a more neutral color because your lamppost would have blended in with the chosen background on this image.
Maybe can you go back a second? Maybe walking around to the other side, changing the background, getting it out of the center would make it a little stronger too.
Snow on the apples.
Love the composition on this one. Love how you saw the apples and the balance that you chose to put into the image of the apples is absolutely beautiful. For me, the processing is way too strong for it. I would like to dial back the processing considerably. I personally would like to see detail in the snow. Or you could, I suppose, go with a completely graphic approach and keep the lack of detail in the snow, but then I don't want to see the overly grungy effect in the branches. So for me, it's go one way or go the other, but not both.
Snow owl resting on a log. Or snowy owl resting on a log.
you're gonna shoot a snow owl, make sure his eyes are open, because those are the coolest parts of the snow owl, those big, big yellow eyes. Other than that, though, compositionally it's great. I kind of would have cropped off this little out of focus area in the bottom here because it kind of distracts at first, but it does kind of give you that sense of depth, which sometimes that does work. In this case, I probably wouldn't have because your background's so nice and blurred out, and you got so much detail in here. I probably would have gotten rid of this, and it might have been just a little bit stronger. But good photo. Make him blink.
Strange bird.
You're immediately drawn into the bird's eye and the details around the bird's eye. There is exceptional detail in his nostrils and beak, but we don't have that same detail in his feathers. We get about midway down his chin, and then we start losing that detail as we sweep out to the corners, but overall, well-rounded image.
Sun rising on Bryce NP. 22.
It's a beautiful spot, and it's a little challenging to capture this at sunrise because you have the bright light coming in. Okay, I can't use the pointer anymore. You have the bright light coming in, and this beautiful lighting through here, but this is very light, too light back through here. I think that this image screams for trying an HDR image, or perhaps a split neutral density filter, holding it down this far, so this part of the image could be a little bit darker, still showing you the light, but not letting it get washed out.
Tahitian lotus, and we can use it right later.
Very pretty. Got all the detail in the whites, nothing's blown out. It actually does look a tad dark to me, actually. That it could have been just a tad up. I mean, like, I don't know if that would have blown out anything, like, like if it was kind of going for a more muted look, but
In post, just bring up your highlights.
yeah. Just bring up highlights in post if it's not going to blow out the details that you're going after.
The cloud.
Well exposed cloud for this subject, with just a little more, a little too much foreground in that, chopping off some of that foreground bay or water area to focus more into the clouds would have worked a little bit more for this subject.
The pasture princess.
Interesting choice to do this in monochrome, but in the snow and the gray sky, that can often work well. The trouble is we don't see much detail in the foreground horse, and that would tremendously add to the image if we could see more detail in him, because we certainly see it in him. So we need to see more detail here. Also, if you wait and watch their positions, ideally if they separate, you don't want them just almost separated. If you can nudge yourself a little to the left, at least you would have that separation. And clearly you won't have it here, but you don't have it now either.
The snow goose.
detail in the goose is spot on. I don't see really any highlights that are blown out in the goose. But I'm really not seeing mass detail in his eyes and his beak. And then we go out to the pier itself. It's a little distracting in the lines for that subject. If we could have shifted over to the right side, it might have helped this image in not having the pillars in the background altogether.
Does it bother you there's a pillar going right up through his head?
Unusual backyard ornament.
It's often nice to take an image from a different perspective, and certainly taking it from up high adds a little different view of things. The trouble is, A, that the image is a bit washed out. Polarizing filter might have helped that, but the composition is not strong. I don't know what you're trying to have me look at. By the subject, you want me to look at this, but I can't figure out why. And then the house and the flag is probably the most dynamic element here. It's got the most energy with the colors and the oblique lines. It's way over here by a house that is cut off on the right, where we have all this empty space on the left. So it's not the strongest composition.
Urban poetry. $23.
I dig it. I love the starburst. The only thing, like these, which I know are just, they're just lens reflections, or actually they could even be just kind of like water spots. I get those quite a bit when you're out in the rain and snow, but it looks like it might even be a train going through maybe, or something like it looks like you've got like the motion lights, back from this. Like it almost like might have been cool to like hit this at a different angle where you can kind of see where these, like where the motion was kind of going through, because it just kind of blends into the background. And to me, that's kind of like one of the stronger elements, other than this really cool looking building right here. That seems to be one of the stronger elements that kind of come through this. So maybe just a different angle, kind of clean up the spots, and this would be really cool.
I think that's a plus.
It's a plus.
Waiting for the cog on Mount Washington.
I didn't see any tracks, but it was big. So.
21.
What am I landing on? And what am I waiting for?
Wait till those tanks draw.
Marty said he's waiting for those tanks to blow up.
Why are they
There's really nothing to land on. I'm seeing some rocks in the foreground that are sweeping toward your left. I look up in the left, there's nothing there that I really want to anchor on. Then I'm swinging back to the mountains, up to a sky that's a little washed out.
There's two rocks there.
Watson Kersey. $22.
Like the nice tight composition on this. The contrast is a little bit extreme, but you could make it work. For me, I would like to see less texture right here so that I focused over here, because right now I'm not sure whether I'm supposed to look up here, or down here. And the one good thing about that is it does bring me around in a circle, but I need to land someplace, and you don't really want me to land there, but I might.
Okay.
Yeah, the depth is lost because of that. If we saw some more detail in that table in the foreground right here, then we would have more depth.
Wet dogs at Logan Falls. $22.
Okay, I've been playing around a lot with HDR lately, especially outside, so this is actually really cool. It's probably a couple blended pictures, but the one thing that really hit me on this is the purplish water. This is something that is easy to do because you're trying to knock down the highlights. And if you don't take, enough shots, you can't recover those. So what it will do is darken them, making them this kind of purplish hue or gray, which, you're not that. I mean, that's not the correct color for it. But I love the exposure and everything else. The fact that the dogs are sitting there really, really kind of adds to it. You've got a lot of detail in this, and it definitely gives it like a 3D look. The only thing that's really hurting this is this right here. If you could fix this and recover this a little bit better, this would be really cool.
It's not that you're not taking enough shots in HDR. You need your HDR range to make it
Right, the
so
correct
that you're
white.
not blowing out your highlights. But why do you say it's a composite image?
It would have to be.
It's not.
Well, it's not a composite. Why? The dogs just got out of the waterfall.
Yeah.
To recover this much highlights in this, and to get, or maybe they just took down the highlights.
Yeah, they just took down.
Yeah, the highlights.
That's
Yeah,
why,
it's not an
that's
H.
why
That's not an
it's just a
HDR.
bright
Not an
amount.
HDR.
It just looks a little bit glowy to me. Like it's got an HDR effect to it.
It does, it looks like it's a tone image.
Yeah.
Are we done?
Worth the walk.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not arguing with it.
23.
I would have liked to have seen a little more of the sky in this particular image and less of the ice pulling up and looking at the sky. The rocks or the actual ice slabs themselves could have been a center focus for your image. So getting rid of all of this here that doesn't really add anything to the image and gain some more sky.
There are lots of ways to see an image, because for me, I was just visually cropping off this left section here, and then this is the center point, and the top and bottom are nicely balanced, so I like it that way. But like I said, there are lots of ways to visualize an image. Exactly.
Are you pulled to the left a lot because the
Because of the
tone-
energy and
Yeah.
the amount of detail pulls you over here.
This picture was taken at Kelly's Island last year early in the sun, as the sun was coming up. So this is the type of pictures you can get at Kelly's Island.
And it's not ice then.
And it's not ice.
It's rocks.
It's rocks.
Slabs, okay.
But it was very interesting. I don't mean to take up a lot of time, but this spot was so interesting with all this slab of rock. And then the sun was coming up and gleaming off of this wet rock. I didn't do it justice, let's put it that way.
It's still pretty beautiful, Patty.
radar
Yellow.
red.
Flowers with black backgrounds come and go in terms of whether it's in vogue or not, but irregardless, there's nothing distracting about the image. There's nothing taking away from it. You know exactly where the subject is. It's beautifully composed, balanced. The sharpness is perfect. So it's beautifully done.
Okay, you're on.